Radio.
The king of talk is back. Don't get mad, get Kyle. Jeremy Kyle at Drive on Talk Radio.
Loving your involvement today. You want to be part of it between now and 70344 499 1000. Kevin O'Sullivan from 7, James Whale. Excellent from 10 o'clock tonight. My next guest, Leon Hady, is called a super head teacher. It's a brilliant story. He once hit the headlines as the super head teacher famed for turning a failing inner city school into one considered, frankly, outstanding by Ofsted inspectors. And that's almost impossible to do. Recently, though, he's been back in the news telling parents what teachers really mean. This is brilliant. This is Parents' Evening is upon us. This is brilliant. What do teachers really mean when they say things like, your son has potential? Your daughter can be enthusiastic in class. Your son's a little on the sensitive side. Your daughter is very eager to please. Your child is full of energy. They just need an outlet. He says these are interesting phrases, but there's a lot more to it. Leon, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you. A very good evening. Thanks for having me.
There you look, the old head teacher with the moustache. What's going on there? Look at that. It's all going on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the lockdown look. Forgive me, it's the post-lockdown look.
I want to talk because it was I read this today and I think it's fantastic. I know you've got this company where you're advising people. Why do teachers, what is this HR double speak then? What does this mean? Give me something. What does they have potential mean, Leon?
So essentially, in a code, they're saying they're not doing what they should be doing. They're not pushing themselves hard enough. And so really, we try to speak very delicately to parents about their children because essentially they've raised them. So sometimes if you were to say that they're quite idle, they're quite lazy, we don't regard that as a great way to come across in a conversation. So we try to, the phrases, positively frame things to parents so they're in a situation where they can handle it and think, okay, how do I...
So you're telling me that teachers BS parents just to make them feel better, if we're being honest, Leon, yes?
I'm telling you that teachers have to be very delicate with parents' feelings and student feelings.
Okay, so isn't the truth that most parents want clear, honest sort of assessments of their child's abilities or failings rather than maybe wondering if there's a hidden meaning in some message that a teacher... So if you say to me, your son's a little on the sensitive side, what does that mean?
Essentially, it might mean that they are mollycoddled at home. So they're in a situation where even the smallest thing in school could offend them or upset them. So again, we don't try and make judgments on the way that parents parent. We just try and encourage them to think, okay, this is another factor to keep in mind. And your point, Jeremy, about the the no BS and what you'd like, we try and do that in the assessments and the overall reports. Parents' Evening obviously is a face-to-face endeavour. So it's not the same as when we write a report to you or when we send you assessment grades. We have to be in a situation there where we're trying to make a relationship with you as well. So do
you think that this sort of desire not to upset a parent and to sort of tread carefully, do you think this is symptomatic of the society we live in? Because I'd be happy for you to say to me, if I was asking, why is my son... Basically, he's a sap, mate. You've wiped his backside for far too long at home. You need to kick him up the backside, send him to school and get him to grow up and be a man. I mean, that's obviously the wrong thing to say because most parents wouldn't like that. But I'd love that because I'd know what the hell you were talking about.
Having taught with a lot of people internationally as well as here, there's a culture that we have here which I'd phrase as all rights and no responsibilities. So I've met more parents here that would generally say, well, what are you doing about it, than trying to go away with that frank piece of advice and then say, okay, I'll go home and do something about this.
Do you feel that parents, when you speak to them, is one of the reasons why this double speak, if you want to describe it, happens? Do you think that parents expect too much of teachers? Do you think it's an easy outlet to say, oh, well, they're not learning that at school, or they're not being taught that at school? Do you think parents need to take more responsibility?
100%, but they need to be trained to take that responsibility. So when you think of something like the NCT classes for newborns, parents have that, and some people elect to do it and elect not to do it, and they learn a lot from the courses and from their peers. We need that at the ages of 5, the age of 7, the age of 11, the age of 16. People don't know how to deal with teenagers. People don't know how to their children go through puberty change. So while they have to have responsibility for it, it used to be the village that collectively could help with that. Now we've siloed people so much, they don't have that access to that knowledge. So yeah, we need to give people the training before we give them the responsibility.
Let's talk about teachers in the classroom now. I always joke and say, come on, you get 19 weeks holiday a year, for God's sake. What are you moaning about? All that money and 19 weeks off. He's got his head down now. But has it changed immeasurably? I mean, you can't discipline a child, can you? Can you raise your voice? Can you? I mean, it must be very, very difficult for teachers, if I'm honest, yes?
Teaching is a relationship-based endeavour. And so you set a tone for yourself with the way that you're going to approach things. If you want to be strict and raise the voice, that can work. I've always found, and we always train people to be in a situation where they try and find a way to the child to actually make them respect them, and then develop a relationship further where the child wants to work with you towards the betterment of themselves. You'll find generally that shouting and raising voices, in some instances this works, but you have to, all the school has to be absolutely on point for every single thing for it to work. And I've seen it.
Well, isn't that like managing a football team? What wasn't the thing that Ferguson once said was that every single player needs to be treated differently. Some need a size 10 up the backside. Some need an arm round their shoulders. Are we saying that every child needs to be treated differently? Because I'm just going to say this to you. I was talking to a school today, a potential school for my son, and having this interview, and the registrar lady was saying that the world has changed, and kids, it's not just about the elite anymore and those who can go here, there, and everywhere. Every child has an ability. It's music to my ears, and of course we need to educate the children to the best we can in maths and English and the basics. But you might be good at the 100-meter hurdles, you might be good at IT, you might be good at skateboarding, I don't know. We've ostracized a lot of kids for a long time, and maybe that between parents and teachers is a really positive way forward. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and the pandemic's opened that up for us. Essentially, we had a massive social experiment where we tried to hybrid the learning, and for some people it really worked. Obviously, you've got more people than ever now doing homeschooling, but a lot more people in other countries who haven't opened up fully, kind of having a hybrid session with one-to-one online, but then work set online. We're finding that so many other ways can work to get assessment and achievement. What we haven't mastered yet is how we can build relationships properly online, but we're getting there. Much like the daylight savings hours, lets us know so much about the benefits of sleep. The pandemic will let us know so much more about the benefits of online learning. And we've only scratched the surface. Give it 5 to 10 years, you'll have a much more even playing field with this.
In terms of the pandemic, I'm thinking about that. There's been lots of talk recently about, how do we get this generation up to speed? Is it longer school hours? Is it shorter school holidays? What are your thoughts on that, Leon?
Essentially, if it was me in charge of the education system, I would simply put everything back a year or two. It makes no difference in a 50 to 70 year career whether you got your GCSEs at 16 or 18 or your A levels at 18 or 19. And I think that is a solution that takes a lot of the pressure off people. If you have poor schools with poor teachers, and obviously that's not what we want, putting more hours with those people in those places is going to make absolutely no difference at all. So I would actually be putting this over a longer period of time to say, look, we've got this small generation where they'll be doing their GCSEs at 17 rather than 16, and then giving people the space to breathe, let the brains grow, mature, absorb what's happened, and they'd be fighting fit at the end of that, rather than trying to.
Tell you what I'd like to ask you as well, because I enjoy listening to your opinions. My daughter got her GCSEs in the middle of the pandemic, and it doesn't matter what she got. She did really well, but I genuinely mean this, hand on my heart. She was going to get that anyway. There was that big bust up about, the way the government were going to do it. Everybody ended up with good grades in the end, which is fair, but then it rather took away, I guess, from the people who would have got better ones. Is that an unfair approach, or do you understand that?
Now being on the other side of it as an employer, you look for so much more than grades. Remember, the grade is ultimately a key.
That's the wish, isn't it? That's the wish.
Yeah, the grade is ultimately a key to the next step. And I think if we've let more people into the next step, so what? That's a good thing, and we should be looking to do that more. And remember, other countries, Queensland in Australia, it's never done anything but teacher assessed grades. Parts of America, never anything but teacher assessed grades. It's a big change for us, but it's also shown us what can be done. And if we really want to realize children's potential and not thwart them, then teacher assessed grades does have a life. Not in the way that we did it this time. It was too onerous on teachers, but it does give everyone else an opportunity.
Are you ever going back to teaching?
Well, we work with 1,000 schools, so I'm always teaching in one way or another, whether I'm teaching.
But you're not going to go back to being a head teacher, because I have a very important question to ask you.
Very important. Personally, I'm looking to support those colleagues, but not go back to it myself, no.
Do teachers ever lie to pupils lie about pupils to their parents just for an easier life, Leon? Come on.
Of course.
I love him.
Well, I'm out of the system, Jeremy. I can say it. So yeah, of course.
Did you ever?
There was a lot of things I would hide from parents, because when you know the relationship with the parent and where they are with their child, you don't want to do things that pour fire on those things. So sometimes you'd find yourself covering a child for a parent, yes, and the other way around.
Do you think parents could do more could work closer with schools or not?
That's what the pandemic has allowed us to see. There were a lot of parents, obviously, who complained, and all the gifs and the memes that went around, like homeschooling, giving up after 10 minutes. But there was a lot of people who actually absorbed it. And there's a hybrid model now where schools are, and parents are more open to it. We made a parent support course for schools, and we had about 30 schools take us up on it. And the feedback from those people actually, like, they just know a bit more about learning. Just know it's
Let me tell you what, I joke and I say you lot get 19 weeks holiday, and I joke. And let me tell you something. 1 week of homeschooling taught millions of people in this country what an impossible job being a teacher is. Leon Hadey, thank you so much for being on
Thanks a lot, Jeremy.
Talk
Appreciate it.
Drive.